Welcome to Section 8, Part 12. We're going to look at processing our command navigation data and then update the command in the queue with that new navigation data and look at previewing the data as well. So we left off with, we created the create command navigation function and we meant to pass the data there, but I've actually passed the command. So we'll just update that to pass the actual command data. So in the create navigation, we just want to make sure that the data is valid and it has, so this is the command data. We want to make sure the navigation data is valid and the command data is valid. And we have those functions built in for that into the struct. I'll make this a not. And just put this on the end actually. So that'll check that we actually have the like a basic navigation, a default navigation set up. It's not just an empty formation. So now we want to pass the data to an async task. So this is something Epic has built in to be able to throw it to another thread. So you can see there it's asking for a thread type and a lambda expression to execute whatever you want to execute on that other thread. So they have ename threads enum here, which has thread types, and we're after any background thread normal task. And we're going to pass in this class. So we're going to pass in our player controller and our command data. And the function that we're going to execute in our lambda is, well, it's going to be our call to our create our formation, but the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create another async task to return the finished calculation back to our main game thread. So in the name threads, there should be a game thread, and then we can again call a lambda on what we want it to do. So, or just a function. So we're doing there, and we're going to pass this again, and we're going to pass. We're actually going to pass the command ID to this separately, and it'll be a new version of the command data that we pass in, but it's basically going to be command data, but we're going to call it navigation result, just so we don't get confused between the two. Again, inside this bracket, we want the code, and now we need a function will handle the completed navigation data back on the main thread. I'm just going to call it on navigation created. We're going to pass the two things there, which we'll sort out in a sec. Let's just create this function quickly. It's going to be, actually no, sorry, it's going to be not command data, it's going to be the navigation data directly. So it's going to be, oh sorry, it's the ID first, so const if good. That's so we can look up the command in the queue and update the command in the queue with the appropriate navigation for it. And that's ID. And then the this can be const, and it'll be the navigation data reference. I'll just call it navigation. So this function will now be where we return after we've done the processing on the other thread. So let's just copy this. And we'll call this navigation result. And it's the command data navigation. We're sort of creating a copy of it there. And this will actually be command data dot get ID. Gonna work. Sorry, it will be this, but what we'll do is we'll create this as well. So I guess it can be const. Okay, so that's, if we just did nothing now, it would just pass in what we passed. It would just pass out what we passed in. So it would just happen straight away. So if we recall, if we come back to our formation data asset, this is where we have our create formation function. So this is our entry into creating all our formation based on what our selection is in the current command. And we need to handle this. We need to get a reference to the formation data that's currently in the command. And if you recall, when we created the navigation data, we update, if the command needed navigation, we updated the navigation data with the current formation. So that was in, that was in here. So if it has navigation, in our update command data, we're getting the command navigation data, and we're getting the formation from the selected. So it's getting the lead of the formation and using their formation. So here we need to reference asset manager and get a reference to that formation data from the formation ID in the navigation data. That included the formation asset there and the asset manager reference. On the asset object, and the asset object we want to get is from the navigation result, the formation ID, and I've got it equals, I've got to pull this formation data. Yeah. So I might actually move all this into here, just so it's, if we don't have a valid formation ID, then none of this is going to happen. It will just end. And instead of the navigation result, we're just reading anyway, so we'll just do it directly from the navigation. So now we have our formation data. We should be able to arrow create formation, and we need to pass in our navigation. So we'll pass in our navigation result, and from our command data, we want the selected or selections. I think it's selections we need. Yep. Yeah, this can't be sorry. And that's because in our create formation, we're overriding the formation data with itself, just so we've got this variable so we can override it for different formation setups. That should be all good. So that's going to go ahead and do our create formation, and you obviously would have been all through that when we created it. So now we can focus back on, so that's off to the old thread. It's going to do all this calculation, and you can give it a test if you like. You can do this part outside without the async thread, and it'll probably hit your game depending on how many units you've had selected. But in the thread, the game goes on, does a calculation, comes back, don't even notice the delay, so minor. So now we are back on the game thread when we get to here, and we can start processing this navigation data we've just generated. So first thing we're going to check, if it's not any good, we're going to break out of this. And then the next thing we want to check is if the ID is valid. So we're going to use a valid ID to check whether this is navigation for an actual command or it's navigation for a preview of a command. And we'll do that by either setting a valid GUID, so a random GUID, or we'll leave it as a 0 GUID and that will be a preview. You'll see that more later, but we're just setting that up here now. So this bottom one will be preview. We'll handle that later. But here, if we do have a valid navigation that's for a command, we want to look up the command and assign the navigation data to the command. So we're going to put that in a function. Just going to call it update queued command. Create that function. Actually, we'll need the ID as well. So pass and go through. So when we come into here, we can probably check it's valid still. I might check the ID is valid as well again. But we want to go through our queue. And if the queue entry has the same ID as what we're looking for, so we've found our command and we just need to set the navigation data. So it'll be queue data.navigation. And now that we've updated that data, in case we've only got one command in the queue, we want to kick off dequeue. We're going to say dequeue, and the dequeue process will sort out whether it wants to execute the next command or not. And then because we've found everything we need to find here, we're just going to return. We don't need to continue going through this for loop. So one thing we want to do here is if dequeue is called from somewhere else and this navigation hasn't been updated yet, we don't want to execute this command. We want it to be basically skipped over. So we're going to, when we do update the command, we're going to set its status to queued. So queued. But that'll mean it can execute. But we'll just copy this, and we need to come to, actually it's just here, this server issue command. So when we do, I believe, I'll check, but when we create the command, the status by default I think might be queued. Let's have a look. Update command data. Don't think it's actually in here. It's probably in the constructor of the command data. So status, yeah, it's no status by default. Set queued. Oh, we've got a function for it. Where's this called? So yeah, when we're in queuing, we're doing set queued. But what we can change here is if the data has navigation, then we want to set this to something else. We're going to call it updating. So if we have navigation, it's going to set a queued command to updating. And if it doesn't, it's going to set it straight to queued. So that's what we want. And then when we update the command navigation, we set it to queued. So it'll be queued. And then the only other thing we need to check on is when so now in the dequeue, where we're checking if the actual command is valid there, or null pointer, and here we're also going to check if the queue, the command data status, actually if it's not equal to queued, then we just want to continue. It has to be queued to be able to be dequeued. Now if you recall, when a command executes, it's going to go through to the command, in this case our navigate to command, and it's going to call execute, which will then begin executing our navigation. And we just got a log in there at the moment. But we want this to do is go through the group. So this will go through our command data and issue the required command to each group. And the reason for that is, if you recall, come back to our command here, and we've got our can execute function here. We're actually using the group to manage and check if entities have a command for them. So each group can report back with if any of its entities or all of the entities that are required for that command are available or not. It's sort of like the communication to the... So then we can just pass everything off to the groups, and at the command level, at this player control level, we're sort of palming everything off to the groups rather than trying to manage individual entities ourselves. Let's set up that handball in the navigate to. So we're going to go to this is execute navigation's called in the execute. We'll leave the log in there so we can see something's going wrong or whatever. So we're going to need to loop over some data here. We're going to loop over, and the data is set on the actual command class, so that's why we've got access to it. And we're going to loop over our selections within that command. We want to check if this selection that we're trying to talk to is valid. And also we're going to check if the group is valid, since that's what we're going to be arming off to. It should have a valid reference to a group. And we're just going to put a check in here to the group to see if this, just to make sure we don't like spam a command at a group multiple times. We're just going to make sure that that group hasn't already been assigned this command, and we can use the the command ID for that. We want the group. And we haven't made this command, I don't think yet. I know we do have that command. Have a look. Yep. All right, so we're doing the same check in the activate, so I won't activate the command if it's already assigned or if it's already completed. So actually I might just copy that. How was it? I'm going to call this execute navigation. I'm just going to pass the actual command, the whole thing. Let's go to our group. And this, we're passing a command. By the time we get to the group, we should still be on the server, so we're just going to check that we have authority still. Also, here we'll check that the command is not null. Now, we want to add to our commands list here. So, I think that's because I made it const. Yeah, let's just leave that as not const. We're not RPCing it anyway, so we'll be fine. And that'll do that check that we just did. So, where was it? So in here, this assign command, it's checking to see if there's a command with the same ID in the commands array. And sorry, I'm just going to move this command down here. So it's got a section for this. Move this underneath here. There we go. And then once we've added it to the group, so we can manage it here, we'll then assign the entities in that command, the command. And same checks. But this time we're going to want to extract just this, because the command has all the selected entities, so we need to extract just this group's selections. So I'm going to create a function for that called getGroupSelection. Our command. This can actually, both these can be protected. Sorry, these down here. That was meant to have a return. Raise group selections, and I'm going to make this a T array. Selections. Yeah, this is the, like, change this to command selections and we get weirded out. Yep, so we just want to check if the group of one of these selections is equal to our group, then that's what we're after. So if we don't find anything, we're just going to return a null empty selection. Yeah, this function can be const, not change anything, we're just retrieving. Now we've got a reference to this group's selection. We need to check that if we haven't returned one of these empty ones, that'll work because our isValid checks for a group, and if it creates a default constructor, the group will be null. Now we want to go through those entities and pass this command onto the AI controller. So be another for loop. And because we're going to go to a controller, you generally always do that from the pawn. So we're going to cast this entity, which is an actor, to a pawn. So I'll call this entity pawn so I don't conflict. Good habit not to use names that Unreal uses around the place because have conflict sometimes. You wouldn't here because it's in our own class, but you never know. Better to use different names. So the recasting that entity that we're up to, and I forgot the pointer. And then we want to get the controller. So the controller we're going to be after is our AI command controller. And we can, on our AI controller now, call an execute command function, which we will create. Over this. Oh, sorry, I didn't do I've done entity pawn. I just need to get controller. Yep, sorry. Let's go create this on our controller here. And we'd want to pass through the command, obviously, so we know what we're doing. URT entities command. And passing the command. In here again, we want to check the and if you recall in here, we've got this active command. So this is where we want to store this command that's coming in. So we want to check if that active command is not null, as in there's already a command there. And we also want to check, just as a double check, we're going to check here if the, actually it'll probably have to be after this null check. We just want to know if, actually I'm going to put it inside. So if the active command, it wants, I'm going to add that automatically for me. Anyway, add the include for the command so I can get the data. Framework command system. And H. Now if I get the data, so I can just use function get ID. If it's equal to the command that's coming through, ID. So basically what we're checking here is if the command coming in is already the active command, then we're just going to return. However, if the active command is not null, meaning that there's currently a command in progress, we're going to complete the current command. So that'll either be an abort or it's finished. And we're going to pass a status for that, but let's just get the function there, create that function. And I'm going to pass every time we finish a command, we're going to pass a status just to update the command, whether it's completed, aborted, it's updating. In that. And here we're going to set the status to updating. Because we have an active command, we have another one coming in rather than just abort it. We're going to give it a special status of updating, and it's so we can sort of merge two commands together. So rather than your AI just stop and then go on to the next command, we can make it so if it's 2 navigation commands, they'll smoothly transition to the next set of waypoints, whatever. That's what that'll be. We'll come back to this. So now here, once that's all checked off, then we can set the active command to the command, and we can change the... Alright, so now that we've got through all that, we again want to just check if we assigned a valid command, double check there, and if we have, we can go on to extracting what it is. So the first thing will be is, does it contain navigation? Because you're probably going to have other commands later. Oops. Now you don't really need to do this check. You could just try and cast it to the navigate to, because we're going to do that anyway. But you can save yourself a cast. If this is false, it's just going to skip over this. Not really going to cost you much, if anything. And we want the navigate to. Now in here, the navigation data, let's go to that. Copy this. And on our controller, we are going to property for the navigation data separately. It wants to be included, not that's including the data types, not just the definition here. And I'm pretty sure we can get rid of that one then. So both in there. Right, so and I'm just doing that because we're going to be accessing our navigation data all the time. It saves us doing this. And the reason for separating all this out is we may have commands later that may either not have command navigation data at all, or may have something else and navigation data. So this is sort of flicking the navigation off to be done, and then we can handle anything else outside of this sort of section. To tidy this up, you could probably put this into a function like handle navigation data or something, but do for now. Let's create this function. All right, probably going to leave this section here, and when we come back, we'll start. I think what we'll do first is we'll generate some debugs to see what our navigation's spitting out for us. Thanks for watching. See you in the next part.